There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between radio and bar talk, between commentary and recaps, and it lies between the pit of man's Netflix subscriptions and the summit of his binge-watching ability. This is the dimension of podcasting and the Twilight Zone. These are the Zone-i-Sodes. And now your hosts, Brandon Davis and Scott McFarland.
Hello everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the Frontal Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies and TV. And welcome to episode 26 of Zone-i-Sodes, our retrospective of every single Twilight Zone episode from the 1950s and 60s. I'm Scott McFarland, and with me as always is...
Brandon Davis. I host classics. It's been a while since I said that.
Yes. So, Brandon, we are here to witness an execution.
Yes, but well, yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
a time traveling execution.
The longest execution ever. It takes 100. I guess no, it takes 60 years.
Yeah.
But it could. Yeah. It's 120 years back and forth, but the one dude only has to do 60. Okay.
Yeah.
Time travel's fun. So we are talking about execution. I will go ahead and give us a synopsis of the episode, and then Brandon can give us Rod's take, and we'll run from there. So it is 1880, and Joe Caswell is about to be hung for a murder he definitely admits to committing. Joe is a bad man, and he isn't about to change his ways at the gallows. Just as he's about to die, Joe finds himself in the 1960s apartment of Professor Manion. Professor Manion has created a time machine, and Joe is the first time traveler in history. Although I don't know how you can check that, because wouldn't time travel not condone or deal with history? It would just cut them down.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it later. Manion soon learns he probably should have been a bit more choosy with his first participant, and Joe kills him. Joe then learns that the 1960s is not at all like the world he left in the 1880s. He returns to Manion's apartment to find Paul Johnson, a burglar. There is a fight, and Joe is killed. Paul then enters the time machine and learns all too late that he has taken Joe's place in the noose.
And here's what Rod had to say. Commonplace, if somewhat grim, unsocial event known as the necktie party. The guest of dishonor, a cowboy named Joe Caswell. Just a moment away from a rope, a short dance several feet off the ground, and then the dark eternity of all evil men. Mr. Joe Caswell, who when the good Lord passed out a conscience, a heart, a feeling for fellow men, must have been out for a beer and missed out. Mr. Joe Caswell in the last quiet moment of a violent life.
I get definitely a Wizard of Oz vibe there too. When they gave out a heart and a conscience and courage and a brain, Joe was not there.
No, he didn't pay attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, I'm going to say he ignored the man behind the curtain. That's kind of creepy, Brandon. Don't do that.
I know, sir.
So, Brandon, tell us about your first impressions of execution.
Interesting episode. Like I said, this is one I hadn't seen, so I was not expecting the whole time travel aspect of it. I'm like, wow, where is he, and why is the professor from Gilligan's Island? But I think the strength of this episode is I think Albert Salmi, who plays Joe, is a really good actor. And I think he does a really, really great job with a character who is not redeemable in any way.
And he has fun with it too.
Yeah, that's the thing. We've had characters who are unredeemable that are just kind of almost unwatchable, but he's compelling to watch. You really sort of, there are moments where you almost feel for him when he's sort of stuck in the 60s and has no idea what's going on. But no, a really great episode, and I thought a really interesting, and we'll get into it later, I'm sure, an interesting comment on justice, and does everyone get justice eventually, even if it's not when you think it should happen. But yeah, an interesting episode with kind of an interesting take that we haven't seen yet on the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're going to see a couple times here in the next few weeks is playing with multiple themes at once. Definitely there is a theme of karmatic justice involved, but I think there's also a comment on society in there too that I'm sure we'll talk about as well. For me, I have seen this one several times, so it was not a shock to me when with the multiple twists happen. But it is nice to see that we're going back to the Old West, at least for a brief moment. This is the second Western we've had. It's also the first, I mean, legitimately the first time travel where there's a time machine episode. So that's a new shtick for season 1 and Twilight Zone 2. I agree with you. I think the acting in here is spot on for at least the two mains. The character of Joe Caswell, he definitely chews up the scenery when he's sitting there on the horse. You know, when the preacher is trying to read him his last rites, and he just says, you know, just Bible's not going to help me unless it can help me get out of this noose. What's the line? I'm not worried about my immortal soul. I'm worried about my mortal neck right now. Yeah. I love that line. And when he's dealing with the impact, the literal impact that 1960s culture has on him, he does quite a bit of fun things too.
He does.
I think this is the first and only time we'll ever see a duel with a TV and the TV loses. But yeah, so I mean, it's one of those that is a mainstay. You see it quite a bit with the marathons. At least I tend to, and I think there's a reason for that. So, what are some things, Brandon, that you liked about the episode?
Like I said, I mean, just the basic things to start out with. The performance, I think Albert Salmi, like I said, is very, very good at playing this role. That there are times where he does chew the scenery, but I think that you can kind of forgive him because he's playing an over-the-top villain. But it's really interesting because he's a very violent individual, and this is an episode I don't think we've seen this much violence in an episode of the Twilight Zone in a while. And I mean, you see two guys get killed very violently. You see, of course, a TV being shot at, but
the TV had it coming though. It drew first. It drew first.
I know. I wonder if Rod was commenting on anything at that point.
I don't know. Rod's just happy to have a paycheck from TV, so I don't know. Commenting on there.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, a very good performance by Albert Salmi, and also Russell Johnson, who is basically kind of playing a much even stuffier version of the Professor, which is hard to do. But
and he's playing a professor.
But he's very good, and he's very convincing, and you can see how he's really wanting to advance technology with his, time machine and everything. The poor sap just happened to, as you mentioned, bring the wrong guy back. Didn't realize that his experiment was going to end up killing him. But that's really great. And like I said, the whole theme of justice, and it's a very simple plot, but I think that that's what Rod does best, doing a very simple story in 25 minutes. And there's a lot more. This is much more of a character-driven piece than a plot-driven piece. It's not really. There's not really a whole lot of big scenes that you can talk about, except for the two big fight scenes that end up in people getting killed. But it's really just people talking in the laboratory and confrontations and seeing the way that he's reacting to society around him. So I think that that's where this episode succeeds. It's a simple story with not many sets, except a couple New York exteriors that they shot and everything, but a really solid outing. And like I said, the whole theme of justice is something that we haven't really talked about yet. But both criminals at some point ended up getting justice. One just a lot of years ahead, and one a lot of years behind him. So that's a really sort of clever twist that Rod did at the end too.
Yeah, and I think we definitely need to talk a little bit, and you've hit on it already, and that is the violence of this episode. It's not just that people get shot, or well, no, nobody gets shot in this, but people shoot things, people die. We've seen that before, but we see, for one, an execution, even if it's silhouetted, and we see an all-out murder. Well, two murders, but one that is very much graphic. I mean, you never see Joe getting strangled, but he's being strangled, and you get a very good close-up on Johnson's face when he's doing it, and there's a lot of violence in that face as he's twisting the curtain rope around his neck. And I don't watch much 1960s TV aside from the Twilight Zone, but I don't think that if you're watching this on prime time in front of your 3-channel TV set, that this is something you've seen a lot of in 1960, spring of 1960. Yeah, that's my hunch. And I'm guessing you don't see much of this in film either.
No, well, by 1960 you would probably see more of it in film, but on TV at the time you'd probably see something like that, maybe on the Untouchables or something like that. But on Dragnet you would see very very clean murders. One gunshot, that would be about it. But yeah, I think Rod really was showing that this is a very primal individual, and he kills people and eventually gets killed in a very primal way. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of jarring, because really, I was thinking back to the last few episodes, we've seen people die in the last few episodes, but it's been in very odd ways. You'll hear a gunshot off screen, and then you'll see them lying on the ground or something like that, or you'll see other people sort of vanish, disappear, things like that. We haven't really seen anybody die in this sort of, for 1960, graphic a way, and that's really interesting that it took 26 editions of the Twilight Zone for Rod to really sort of bring that into his canon right here. But yeah, I think that really helps this episode to kind of stand out.
Yeah, and this is definitely trying to say something about that justice piece too. This is a story originally by George Clayton Johnson, and the screenplay was written by Rod himself, like most screenplays were for the show. And with that, it's definitely an eye for an eye type motif. It's not just that Joe doesn't get to escape his justice. His justice comes in the very form that he thought he had escaped the first time. And you're right that Johnson, almost immediately after taking that life, trades his life in as well too. And I would almost argue that Manion, who is killed in this too, also has a little bit of justice coming to him, because it takes a lot of ego to feel that you can randomly pull somebody from the world of the past and bring them into this world and basically turn them into an experiment. Manion says that he's like, you're going to be a wonderful example of the past, and he basically is going to put him on stage like King Kong in New York and have everyone look at him. So Manion, I mean, doesn't deserve to die, perhaps, but I think justice comes for him too.
Yeah,
and that is one of the themes. But I think there's also another theme here too that's a little more on the nose in the last act of the show, but it's something interesting too. Is when you have the 1980s, the 1880s scene, it's very stark and quiet. There's just people talking, and there's not much else going on around. Obviously, they're in the desert around a hanging tree, but still, the point there is that it's very much a stark area, and there's not much in the way of sensory excitement. But then when you get into the 1960s, obviously you have the neon jungle, and we get the same kind of neon lights we had in the Four of Us Are Dying, and a few other ones as well too. Although they do actually have sets when he's walking down the street, so I won't complain too much about that this time. But I mean, the fact that you have this fish out of water, and it's not just that he's confused or are scared of the horseless carriages. It's that the overwhelming sound of this culture and the overwhelming lights of this culture is actually hurting him physically. And I think that's an interesting conversation on where we have come. And looking back now in 2017, Joe is almost 120 years removed from us. Yeah. But for this episode, he's only 80 years removed. He's only 2 or 3 generations removed. So he could still be alive in the 1960s. So it's amazing to think how far society has moved from 1880 to 1960. I find that pretty interesting too. And it's interesting that they don't sugarcoat it or try to say, well, society has gotten better here. Society's gotten loud.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. You think about that 80-year jump from then to now. Just think about that 60-year jump between 1960 and now, even, and how much louder a society we've become. So,
but I want my time machine, damn it.
Yeah. but yeah, I also really, it's interesting that this is also really the first bit of time travel that we've seen from Rod, and I really like, where he's taking us with that, and we'll see more time travel, I believe, in the future. Yeah,
we will most definitely see some time travel. Actually, and now you say that, I mean, we had The Last Flight, so we had a little bit of time displacement there, but I think this is obviously the first time we have like
a time machine. Yeah,
Wells time machine.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I like that. That's another reason why I like this episode is, sci-fi is many things, obviously. And for a lot of people, sci-fi is space or future or things of that nature. But I also really do enjoy the exploration of the fourth dimension of time. One of my favorite movies, and one of these days I'll get Craig to do a dish on it, is Interstellar. And Interstellar deals with going through a black hole and a wormhole and going into space. But the true point of that movie is time. And I love stories that deal with that. I think this one, using it as a plot device, is very good. The one thing I would have loved to see, and maybe if this was a season 4 hour-long episode, I would have loved to see if there was any impact of taking Joe out of that place. I mean, obviously probably not, because he was going to die anyway. But there's always a butterfly effect when you deal with this kind of stuff. It would have been interesting to see if, there was some discussion about the guy who mysteriously disappeared or anything like that.
Yeah.
We only have a half an hour, so I think they crammed in enough.
Yeah, well, and we were going to eventually get to it anyway, but that's really, this is a very strong episode for me. The only thing that really, to me, didn't work, and it really is just because we didn't have enough time, and that's, I would have liked the characters in the 1880 part of the episode a little more fleshed out, because they all just seemed a little too cardboard cutout, but, they were only on screen for 2 minutes, so you can't really do much with that. But yeah, it would have been nicer to have that fleshed out. But overall, I mean, this is a really, really, we've seen strong episodes here, and this is another very individual, strong outing.
Yeah. Did I lose you?
Nope.
Oh, okay. You just said really a lot. So yeah, and you make a good point on the 1880s characters, and I think part of it is the juxtaposition that we have, where we have Joe on the horse with the noose around him, and he is very much bringing this character to us, and committing blasphemy, saying, "Yeah, hell, I did it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat." And so you've got that really like stark, dark character, which is great for a villain. And then you have the other one. You have like the cookie cutter. Okay, you've got the priest, you've got the sheriff, you've got the dad, and the dad's acting's a little bit, could have been a little better. Your son just got killed by being shot in the back. you're saying you're upset, but I'm not really feeling that you're upset. I would be the one trying to, pull the rope myself if that was my kid getting shot in the back.
Yeah.
So I think part of that is because the actor is doing so well playing Joe, that it may kind of detract from the other ones that are close to him. I think the other thing that I wish could be a little stronger is the Burglar Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah.
He comes in at the very end, and he is literally there just to make the point. So, but I think if we would have maybe seen him earlier on, it strikes me as very coincidental. And maybe that's the point, but it's very coincidental that this guy just happens to decide to rob Manion's apartment the very same night that Manion gets killed, the very same night that Joe gets pulled into the future. I think if maybe we was seen maybe Johnson kind of staking the place out, or maybe Johnson was an assistant who was fired by Manion or something to just give me a connection that this guy isn't just a random plot device, I think would have made this episode a little bit stronger. But all in all, it's definitely a strong episode.
Yeah. For some reason that didn't bother me as much, but I think, like you said, at this point, at this point, well, we all know I grade on a higher curve, but but I think had this been, like you said, an hour-long episode, we would have gotten more characterization out of him. But like you said, I think that his character is really the only plot device, I would say, in the whole piece. But it suited him perfectly. But I don't think he didn't play it over the top the way that some other actors might, or anything like that. He really was sort of a fleshed out character in the small time that we got him.
I agree. I have no problem with the actor. I think I have no problem really with the character. It's just how the character is inserted. Just kind of, it does not hurt the episode too much. It's just, I think that's one thing where if you had a few more takes with the script, you could have fleshed him out a little bit more. Is there anything else you want to add before we go into our scores, Brandon?
Not really. I just to reiterate, I mean, I really enjoyed the themes of justice that we get in this episode, and about the differences in culture between 1880 and 1960, and the way it all sort of comes together at the end. You've got past meeting present with Joe and Manion at the beginning, and then Joe and Johnson at the end. But it's interesting to see Joe on the different sides of it, and the first act and the second act of the episodes. But yeah, a really, really strong little one act play almost that Serling conceived here in this episode.
Agreed. So let's go ahead and do our scores. For those who may just be joining us for the first time, we rank these episodes on a scale of 1 to 10, and they are compared to other episodes of the Twilight Zone. So a 5 would be an average episode of the Twilight Zone, a 10 would be one of the best episodes of all time, and a 1 would be Bewitching Pool. So, Brandon, where would you put the execution on your scale?
Well, as I've mentioned before here throughout this whole episode, this is a very strong episode, very individual episode, something we haven't seen before. So I still feel, though, we've seen stronger episodes before this, because I think even though this one has minimal flaws, there are episodes that we've seen that have even less flaws than this. But I think for originality and for just having a strong theme and really, really good actors, even though it's not a top tier episode, I would still give this episode an 8.
8, okay. I think it's definitely one of the higher episodes. We've mentioned this before, and Rod mentioned this in interviews. There was about a third and a third and a third. You had a third episodes that were really good, third episodes that were, they were fine, and a third of the episodes he wants back. And I think this is definitely one of those top 1/3 episodes. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it an 8 as well.
Awesome.
I know. I'm getting nicer as we go along. I think because I've seen more episodes, so I have a better judge of things. That will not.
Well, I think.
I don't think. But.
Well, Well, we kind of, for the rest of season 1, we kind of have a mixed bag here coming up.
I will tell you though, and we just started a new show on the front row called Guilty Pleasures, where we're going to be talking about movies that you really shouldn't like, but we like anyway. And there is an episode coming up, and it is titled Mr. Beavis. That probably is a guilty pleasure of mine. We'll see what you say in about 7 or 8 weeks, but I think I'm gonna give that one a little bit more of a pass than most people would. But so we both give Execution an 8. Let's go ahead, and before we do our shameless plugging, go ahead and finish this out with what Rod had to say at the end.
Sure. This is November 1880, the aftermath of a necktie party. The victim's name, Paul Johnson, a minor league criminal and the taker of another human life. No comment on his death, save this: justice can span years. Retribution is not subject to a calendar. Tonight's case in point, in the Twilight Zone.
You can always find us on the frontrowmoviereviews.com, and also you can subscribe to us here at our Zone-i-Sodes feed, and hopefully you've done that. And also check us out on iTunes and give us a rating. And actually, we love to hear from you as well. If you can get a hold of us at Zone-i-Sodes, it's zone apostrophe or hyphen. I really didn't think about this when we put it together, but zone hyphen I hyphen Zodes. But the easiest way to get a hold of us would just be to find us on the frontrowmoviereviews.com. We also have a Facebook page now, and that's Zone-i-Sodes, so you can find us there as well. The link to the Facebook page is also in the show notes. I did want to highlight, I mentioned iTunes, and we really do appreciate that we're starting to get some good reviews on iTunes, and I wanted to highlight one of them, just because, it made me feel good inside. Angular Turnip. I don't know how you got the name Angular Turnip, sir, or madam, for that matter. But we do appreciate your 5-star review, and I just wanted to read what Angular had to say. A perfect podcast for longtime fans as well as those just discovering Rod Serling's classic for the first time. The hosts have wonderful chemistry. I love you too, Brandon. You may not always agree with them and what they have to say, but like me, I'm sure you'll find their observations reliably laugh out funny and illuminating. I'm not sure about that, but we'll take it. The hosts often joke that it will take them years to finish reviewing each episode. True. Well, there's one listener who plans on being with them on their long, turbulent journey from the terrific Where Is Everybody to the fiasco that is the Bewitching Pool. So, Angular Turnip, thank you so much for the 5-star review. And if you want to shamelessly be plugged on Zone-i-Sodes, feel free to give us a 5-star review, and we will be happy to read what you have to say. The fun thing, somebody's going to figure out the loophole. They're going to give us a 5-star review and bash the heck out of us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read it.
Any publicity is better than none.
Exactly. And speaking of publicity, one of the other things we've done with this show is we've really gotten involved in the Twilight Zone community on Reddit. There is a subreddit called Twilight Zone, and we've been talking to those guys a lot and having some really good conversations. And one of the things that came up is there was a guy there by the name of Jerod Pedone, and Jerod has he creates music, and he has written several songs that have come about from inspiration that he has watching Twilight Zone episodes. So we got a hold of Jerod, and the first episode that he used as inspiration that in the sequential order that we're going through was Execution. So we reached out to him, and he was happy to share with us his music, and we're going to actually play that at the end of this episode. So after we go through the thank you for listening, all that good stuff, stay on with us, and we will play Necktie Party by Jerod Pedone. And actually, you can find Jerod's work at ninthfloormannequin.bandcamp.com. So another reference to Twilight Zone, actually. ninthfloormannequin.bandcamp.com. And again, we'll play his music at the end. And we want to thank Jerod for letting us do that. And we love highlighting how Twilight Zone has continued to impact our culture and our in this case, impacted our music years after it has left the airwaves from its first original viewing. So, Brandon, you have anything else you want to say before I finish my rambling?
Not really. Just looking forward to finishing up season 1 here. We kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel now. We're kind of downhill on season 1 now. So
you're here. We only have what?
Getting there.
10 more weeks to go?
Something like that. And we have to plan our big end of season episode, whatever we're doing.
It'll be a smorgasbord of something.
Yeah. We got a few weeks to figure it out, though.
That we do. All right. Well, until next time, I have been Scott McFarland, and with me has been
Brandon Davis.
And we will see you on the couch. And please don't murder people and get hung while we're waiting for the next episode.
Please.
Please, please. And don't steal me from time, unless you're going to take me to a really cool future and not get me killed in the process. That's all I ask.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Zone-i-Sodes. Zone-i-Sodes is a special presentation of the Front Row Movie Reviews podcast. For more information, go to www.thefrontrowmoviereviews.com.
Lower all the lights and sound, feeling overwhelmed here and now. Static from an urban scene can drive a simple man to his knees. But desolation yields a different war. The quiet of a frozen lake can drive a man insane just the same. But some people just don't have any place. No, some people just don't have a place. We love to grow up in a comfortable fear we know, or exposed to an unknown infinite world we fall. The need to understand everything. It's dangerous, so dangerous. Taunted by a road